The Scotttcast Episode 1 Crucified on Good Wednesday? The Two Sabbaths Interpretation. Hello and welcome to Episode 1 of the Scotttcast. On this show I'll be covering topics of any interest, whether religion, politics, science, the latest news or fun stuff. For my inaugural episode, I'd like to talk about the crucifixion of Jesus taking place on a Wednesday instead of the usual Friday we're used to. This might sound controversial, but just take it as an open invitation to study and rethink the usual interpretation of Good Friday leading to Easter Sunday. You might find some valuable new information for your consideration. Let's start with an account of Jesus' death and burial. Luke chapter 23, verses 52 to 54 say, "Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body. Then he took it down, wrapped it in a linen cloth, and placed it in a tomb cut in the rock, one in which no one had yet been laid. It was preparation day, and the Sabbath was about to begin." The key thing here is which Sabbath is being mentioned. Now we always assume it is Saturday, which is the Jewish weekly day to rest from work and worship God. However, in Jewish understanding, there were two different types of Sabbath: the weekly one and the once-a-year special religious festivals. In fact, we see this specifically mentioned in John chapter 19, verse 31. Now it was a day of preparation, and the next day was to be a special Sabbath. Because the Jewish leaders did not want the bodies left on the crosses during the Sabbath, they asked Pilate to have the legs broken and the bodies taken down. A special Sabbath is from the NIV translation. The NKJV renders it, "For that Sabbath was a high day." What special Sabbath or high day was this? Since Jesus had earlier eaten the Passover meal with the apostles at the Last Supper, reference Luke chapter 22 verse 8. Let's see what Jewish holy day follows Passover. We go back to the Old Testament, Leviticus chapter 23 verses 4 to 8. "These are the Lord's appointed festivals, the sacred assemblies you are to proclaim at the appointed times. The Lord's Passover begins at twilight on the 14th day of the first month. On the 15th day of that month, the Lord's festival of unleavened bread begins. For 7 days you must eat bread made without yeast. On the first day, hold a sacred assembly and do no regular work. For 7 days present the food offering to the Lord. And on the 7th day, hold a sacred assembly and do no regular work." There it is, the festival of unleavened bread. It starts immediately after Passover, and during the first and 7th day of the festival, all work is forbidden, such as carrying out a burial. This idea of two Sabbaths, the special annual first day of the Festival of Unleavened Bread, starting Wednesday evening, followed by one regular weekly one on Saturday, is further boosted by comparing the following passages about spices. First is Mark chapter 16, verses 1 and 2. "When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome bought spices so that they might go anoint Jesus' body. Very early on the first day of the week, just after sunrise, they were on their way to the tomb." So Mark says that the women waited for the Sabbath to finish, and after that, they went and bought spices. Now compare against Luke chapter 23, verses 55 and 56. "The women who had come with Jesus from Galilee followed Joseph and saw the tomb and how his body was laid in it. Then they went home and prepared spices and perfumes, but they rested on the Sabbath in obedience to the commandment." Here, Luke says that the women prepared spices and perfumes before they rested on the Sabbath. Mark and Luke seem to be contradictory if we assume only one Sabbath, that is, the normal weekly Saturday one. But we know that God's word is correct and true, so the Bible cannot contradict itself in such a blatant manner. Furthermore, Mark's account was likely already in existence when Luke wrote his book, and Luke used Mark as a reference for his investigations. Surely the good doctor wouldn't have been so careless in his orderly account? But if we assume two Sabbaths, then Mark and Luke are both correct as follows. First, the special annual Sabbath was on Thursday, and everybody rests. Then, the women buy and prepare spices on Friday. And then the normal weekly Sabbath begins on Saturday, and everybody rests again. And finally, the women go to Jesus' tomb on Sunday. And here is the kicker. If this chronology is correct, if there are two Sabbaths, then it also fits much better with Jesus' very specific prophecy from Matthew chapter 12, verses 39 and 40. Then some of the Pharisees and teachers of the law said to him, "Teacher, we want to see a sign from you." He answered, "A wicked and adulterous generation asks for a sign, but none will be given it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a huge fish, so the Son of Man will be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." Now the counting method in order to make this prophecy align with Good Friday is that Jesus died before evening of Friday. So that was the first day. When evening came, by Jewish reckoning, that is the start of a new day, just like modern reckoning starts a new 24-hour period from midnight. So evening of Friday and the next 24 hours through to evening of Saturday was the second day. And when Saturday evening transitioned into Sunday, that was the third day. 3 days, but barely touching Friday and with only partial of Sunday. Yet, if we take Jesus' words at face value, he promised to be buried 3 days and 3 nights. Now let's use Good Wednesday as the assumption instead. If we follow the interpretation that the crucifixion took place on Wednesday, then Wednesday evening to Thursday evening, 24 hours, that was the first night and day. Thursday evening to Friday evening, another 24 hours, that was the second night and day. And Friday evening to Saturday evening, the last 24 hours, that was the third night and day. 3 full night and day cycles. And then, just as promised, Jesus came back to life sometime between Saturday evening and Sunday morning, before it was light. John chapter 20 verse 1 says, "Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. 72 hours, 3 nights, and 3 days, exactly as Jesus proclaimed." So, to summarize the Good Wednesday interpretation, Jesus had the Last Supper with the apostles as Tuesday evening signaled the start of Passover. And then during the night, he was arrested, put on trial, scourged, and sentenced to die. On Wednesday, during daylight hours, Jesus was crucified and died and was buried before evening, just as the account states. Immediately following Passover, which ended Wednesday evening, the Festival of Unleavened Bread started at the same Wednesday evening and lasted until Thursday evening. As a special and a Sabbath, everyone rested in accordance with the law. Thursday evening and into Friday is a normal day. The shops are open and the women go to buy spices and take them home for preparation. Friday evening until Saturday evening is the usual weekly Sabbath, so the women stay home. After Saturday evening, with 3 full days and nights having passed, Jesus is resurrected. And on Sunday, the women head to the tomb and they find Jesus' body no longer laid there. And there you have it, a different and, in my opinion, better way of looking at the crucifixion timeline. Now, although it may sound controversial, think about it in perspective. There is no crucial salvation doctrine that hangs on having a Good Friday. Even the celebration of Easter Sunday, and therefore the Good Friday preceding it each year, is based on the timing of the vernal equinox. But the Good Wednesday interpretation reconciles Mark and Luke's accounts of the spices and Sabbaths, and comfortably fits Jesus' 3 days and 3 nights prophecy. So I hope you give it some consideration instead of rejecting it outright. Well, that's all for today. I hope you learned something new or even enjoyed this Scotttcast. So feel free to leave any questions, comments, or suggestions below. And click like and subscribe.